Okay, so thank you everybody for your time and attention this morning. Got just kind of a brief set of slides to go over for this extra session before we get to lunch today, and talk a little bit about the hackathon more generally, and how to sort of start preparing for that a little bit. And as always, we like to thank our funding sources through the NSF, as well as our support networks, who provide us with a lot of help in getting ready for this workshop. Okay, so I know for people who have watched the orientation video already, this is going to be a little bit of review, but I figured it'd be good to just briefly touch on details again for the hackathon. So our hackathon this year is taking place from Friday, August 7th to Sunday, August 9th. That's next weekend. Um, we will have a couple of hackathon project pitch meetings this week. So during the extra session before lunch tomorrow and on Friday, July 29th and 31st, respectively, we'll have time for people to present their hackathon ideas in a lightning talk of 3 to 5 minutes each. Um, I'll have details on the next slide about how to sign up for those if you're already prepared. To give a quick talk, we have a template for you to use, a suggested template. You don't have to use that, but we've found that this um, presenting according to the ideas in our template is probably the best way to get other people thinking about whether or not they might be interested in joining your project. We will help during the lightning talks to scope your project a little bit if needed. So if you have a big idea and you're not sure exactly how to get started on condensing it down into something that can be achieved in 2.5 days, we can help you with that during your lightning talk and some feedback, and then moving forward throughout the next 2 weeks before the hackathon actually starts. So we're happy to work with you to find a portion of your project that is doable over the weekend. We can help suggest teams before the start of the hackathon. So if you do not have to have a project idea to participate in the hackathon, we should make that very clear. You are welcome to join another project group, or if you just need more time to think over the next 2 weeks about what you may want to model or what kinds of things you may want to help other people model, that's perfectly fine. You do not have to come to the hackathon with a pre-existing idea. So we can help you find a team if you're having trouble. If you do want to participate in the hackathon and you'd like to join a team, but you're having trouble finding one that will fit your interests and capabilities, we are happy over the course of next week, particularly, to help people find groups so that they can get some hands-on experience over the weekend, next weekend. Um, Maisha asked about hours. Well, I'll have that on, um, I think, the next slide. If not, I can go over them in just a minute. There's a channel in the Slack workspace for the hackathon for people to kind of just look for groups. Um, you can also make other channels within the Slack workspace for your particular project if you'd like, for people to talk about your um, particular problem of interest. So we found that the Slack historically has been a good way for people to meet and communicate outside of the kind of standard workshop sessions. It also helps out a lot with various time zone differences. People come from all different time zones for this workshop. So having a space where you can communicate um, asynchronously outside of the workshop sessions is very useful. Day one, we'll go from 10 to 11 with final lightning talks or talk updates. So we'll have 1 hour when we start for people to um, finish discussing their ideas or present their idea if they've had one and haven't had a chance to present yet. From 11 to 12, we'll do an open teaming session. From 1 to 3, you'll have some time for project setup, scoping, and planning session. So we like to give you the afternoon to kind of get your project planned, and set goals as a group about what you'd like to have done by the end of the weekend. We'll have a check-in from 3 to 4, and then work time from 4 to 6. Day 2 and 3 will be more or less the same, where we'll have morning check-ins, and then we'll just break breakout rooms up for people to join their project groups and work for several hours. We have a quick check-in around lunchtime, and then another large block of work time before kind of a quick check-in in the evening to let us know how things are going and what kind of help you may need on Sunday from our instructional team. Day 3 is more or less the same, aside from the fact that we have a longer report session at the end. So you'll put together a very brief, again, like 5-minute um, final presentation to kind of show what you set out to do during the weekend, um, how things actually went, where the model currently is, and what, if anything, you're planning to do after the hackathon to finish up the model. So let me get back to my other slide. So the time frame, to answer your question, Maisha, is the time will be pretty much the same overall as the workshop days, but the structure is pretty different. Structure within those hours, but we still go from 10 to 6. We do like to mention that we do offer post-hackathon support for hackathon teams. So if you're interested in continuing to work on your project to either generate a publication, or if it's something you're working on for your thesis, or even if you just want to continue working on the project out of your own interest, we are happy to continue to meet with you after the hackathon for that. Obviously, we'll want, a couple of weeks of break after the workshop. But then after that, we are happy to continue to meet with people and work on your projects if you'd like to try to turn it into something more formal. And that goes for people who don't attend the hackathon as well. If you do have an idea that you'd like to build in CompuCell, even if you don't attend the hackathon, we're happy to continue to meet with you as well. If you don't have a specific idea in mind, but you think you'd like to start looking at maybe some ideas for what you might want to do during the hackathon, reproducing existing models using CompuCell is a great idea, and we have some suggestions here on the next page. If you'd like to talk with us, we have a few ideas that have kind of been bouncing around for a couple of years that we can also suggest as maybe starting points for you. So a little bit about teaming. We do have our hackathon teaming document. So this is what we use to kind of keep track of our official project teams going into the hackathon. We don't use it so much once the hackathon starts, but this document is a good way to start looking for group members. So if you have a hackathon idea, you can put your name in this first space here. Zoom in just a little bit. Following the format listed here. If you're looking for a project to join, you can put your name, email, and then a very brief description of your background and maybe any relevant skills that you feel might be useful for a hackathon team. You don't have to be an expert programmer to participate in the hackathon. Hackathon teams benefit most when there is a variety of backgrounds on them. So having a couple people maybe who do programming and then having one biological expert and maybe somebody who's done modeling in a different field, just as an example of a team structure. It's very useful to have people that help address multiple aspects of the modeling process. So if you are looking for a team to join, you can put your information there. And then if you have an example project, or if you have a project idea, we have a project description format. So you would copy paste this page into a new page below, and add your project to the document. That way people can begin to look at your project and maybe put their name down as a potential teammate if they're interested. Again, we do have a hackathon channel in the Slack workspace. We just went over the teaming doc. And then this link here is a list of possible reproduction ideas. These are papers that I believe were not implemented in CompuCell. They're either experimental papers or they're a computational paper using a different framework. These are papers that we feel are good fits for reproduction in CompuCell. So if you need a few ideas, maybe to start thinking about what you might want to do, this reproduction ideas document is a good place to start. Anyway, getting back to lightning talks, these are 3 to 5 minutes each, so they're very quick because we do like to have a little bit of time to provide feedback on your idea. We have our suggested template here, which covers discussing biological background, your modeling goals, your feasibility and plan for the weekend. So aside from your modeling goals, how do you think you can get this done or get something done in the 2 days of the hackathon? Um, and then maybe potential teammates for maybe who you're looking for to help join your or to join your group to help with the project. You do not have to follow this presentation template exactly. If you already have some slides from an existing presentation or something like that, that's fine. The template is just there to give you guidance on what is most important to talk about in your 5 minute lightning talk. So you don't have to use this exact slide deck. This is just kind of what we like people to cover in these talks. And then once your slides are ready, do go ahead and upload them to the Hackathon Talks folder at this link in the Hackathon subdirectory in the student materials folder. That way people have access to your slides to take a look after the fact if they can't make your session or if they have questions moving forward. And you can version your slides as well. If you need to make updates and re-upload them, that's fine. So we'll talk more about this in detail on the first day of the hackathon to get you thinking about working with your group, but I thought it might be good to bring it up here just to get people thinking about it in advance. We'll have some time over the weekend for people to be mulling over their ideas and how best to implement them during the hackathon. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about scoping here. There's a couple of questions we like to address when you're thinking about your model purpose, particularly when you're going into a very time-limited hackathon setting, like we'll have next weekend. And those two questions are, what are we trying to do? And can the phenomenon we're modeling be broken down into component parts? For what are we trying to do? That's basically what is the goal for the weekend. So what question is our model trying to answer? Usually we like to narrow down to one specific question for the hackathon. Helps really focus things for that 2 day session. Basically, what output do we want at the end of this? What should our model look like? And what output are we getting that helps answer um, the specific research questions we have in mind? So along with that, what hypotheses are we testing? If we're modeling something that's been run experimentally, what hypotheses are we trying to explore with the model? What is the simulation's function? So the hypotheses might be larger than we have time for during the hackathon. So what is this specific simulation trying to address? It can always be expanded later, but what is our current simulation output intended to tell us? And then again, along those lines, what do we expect the final results to look like? Then for can the phenomenon we're modeling be broken down into component parts? This is more of a logistical thing. So if your larger question or your larger model that's addressing maybe a bigger question can be broken down into smaller parts, how long will each part take to model? Is a single component enough for a 2 day project? Um, and then which piece is most foundational? So which component do we need to build first before we start adding other things in? Again, the idea by the end of the hackathon is to have a working prototype of a model that can be iterated moving forward, not so much to have a completed, research ready simulation. So it's always important to identify which piece you need first. What is the simplest version of this model that we can build this weekend? And then you can always start adding complexity if it turns out easier than you thought. It's much more difficult to go the other way, where you try to build the framework for every single piece that you might need, um, and then start plugging those pieces in, and then realize that the framework was too big to address in a weekend. So it's much easier to start simple and add complexity than it is to start complex and then simplify down, when you realize you're running out of time. A few things to mention about scoping for team logistics. You will have 2 days to prototype your project. In total, that'll be 10.5 hours of free work time during the day when the instructors will be available. Obviously, you are welcome to continue working on your project throughout the evening. Some teams like to leverage the fact that they have people from different time zones for this. Some people will be up while other people are sleeping at night and during the morning. But you will have 10.5 hours of assisted work time where the instructors can come help you. Um, so thinking about how to best manage that instructor available time is important on that first day of planning. Important questions to address at the beginning of the process is what is the end goal for the weekend? Make sure everybody's on the same page about what you're trying to produce. What is each person going to do? Once those things have been done, how will those pieces be combined? That's something that hackathon teams in the past and even just professional software teams struggle with all the time is if you have different people working on different portions of a piece of code, when it comes time to put those things together, that's usually where you hit a lot of your debugging roadblocks. So having some idea of how the pieces will fit together at the end in advance will save you a lot of time and a lot of struggle at the end of the hackathon. And Pedro will actually be giving a session next week, I believe on Thursday, on using VS Code for writing CompuCell code that allows for real-time collaboration, sort of Google Drive style within the code. So if your hackathon team is interested in getting that set up, then that session would be very useful to attend. And that'll be actually right before the hackathon, so it'll be well timed. But that will help with that process of recombining a lot if you can all kind of work on the same document separately. Another important question to ask is what don't we know about your biological problem of interest? So, and about your maybe what CompuCell features need to be used to model that. So, what do we still need to learn during the hackathon to fully address our problem? And when are we going to learn it? Do we need to learn it all up front, or can we kind of look up this thing now, figure that out, and then figure this piece out later as it comes up? And one thing we also like groups to talk about, at least for a few minutes before they start, is what is the protocol for when things don't work? So when you have teammates who maybe come with two pieces of code that don't work, or you have ideas about a model, about how to implement part of a model, and you have two teammates that have differences of opinion and are maybe butting heads a little bit, having a standard protocol for how to resolve those issues um, is very useful, and that will differ a little bit from group to group depending on whether you know each other, whether you don't. We let groups figure that out, but discussing that at least for a few minutes before the project starts, we found is very useful. So something to think about. We can always help. Instructional team can also always help address those kinds of issues, but um, we haven't ever had any big issues with people not getting along in their hackathon groups, but it is a very demanding and time-intensive process, and we do find that people um, sometimes need a little bit of help just smoothing over those, some of the rough edges that come from exhaustion. So we are happy to help with that, but having an internal policy in your group will go a long way as well.